So today we're going to talk about one of, I think, the greatest compositions in the history of jazz, Confirmation. This tune was written by Charlie Parker in 1945. Here's a really cool piece of trivia. The first time Confirmation was ever recorded, Charlie Parker was not even on the record. It was Dizzy Gillespie. Charlie Parker didn't even record his own composition until 1953. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of a cool nugget of information. What we're going to talk about is the first A section of Confirmation, why it's so genius, and then I'm going to give you a couple of ways to work on this extremely hard chord progression. So we all know that this tune has one of the harder melodies in jazz history. And to tell you the truth, before working on any of this, I would go and learn that melody. It's both a technical challenge as well as a challenge to the ears. It's pretty complicated. And the bridge is really going to have you pulling your hair out, but that's a good thing. This melody, even though it'll be frustrating to learn, will really make you a better musician. Now, the A section of this tune is one of those kind of rites of passage when it comes to being a jazz musician. You know, you've got the blues, you've got rhythm changes, giant steps. These iconic progressions in jazz are part of understanding the jazz language and being able to play at a high level. It is really my belief that this chord progression over the A sections is one of those. Now, it's important to realize that there's another Charlie Parker composition called Blues for Alice, which actually uses the same first 4 bars of this progression. So when you're practicing it, not only are you practicing Confirmation, you're also practicing Blues for Alice, which is really cool. Of course, it changes after the first 4 bars, but the first 4 bars are really, I think, the hardest part. All right, so let's dive in. We'll analyze the chord progression, and then I'll give you some ways to approach it that I think are really, really valuable. All right, so first let's look at why the first 8 bars of Confirmation is just so cool. All right, so we're in the key of F, and then what we immediately do is we look like we're modulating to the relative minor, which would be D minor. Look at the first chord in measure 3. It is D minor. So we do this like pseudo modulation here by going down a half step and playing a 2, 5 to D minor. Now, where a lot of tunes would just do that and then you would be in the key of D minor, this one just keeps going. And this D minor is actually not the relative minor. What this kicks off is a 3, 6, 2, 5 to the 4. Isn't that nice? Really, really nice. And in that way, it's functioning like a blues. There's so much harmonic movement. It's quintessential bebop chord movement, but it also has a huge element of the blues, which is going from the 1 chord in measure 1 to the 4 chord in measure 4. Now, the other thing that's really cool about this is when it goes to the 4, it's a dominant chord. Right? So that makes it a little bit unstable. It's saying to us, hey, this is probably going to keep going somewhere else. Whereas if it were a major chord, it might feel a little bit more stable, like, hey, we're here in the key of the 4. But just like we did here when we thought maybe we were modulating to the relative minor, we're going to keep going. All right? So now what we have is this 2, 5 to the 5 of 5. And I know that's a mouthful, but that's really what it is. So 2, 5 to the 5 of 5. And then finally what we see is that 5 of 5 becomes the 2, and we play 2, 5, and then we land on 1 in the second section of the tune. Okay, the second A section. So really genius chord progression. Let's hear all of it together. So think about all the different things we have going on here, right? We have an element of all of the normal modulations that we see in jazz standards. We kind of see a little bit of them shoved into this chord progression right here, a modulation to the relative minor, but not really. What it's really doing is pushing us to the 4, which is the other most common modulation that we see is 1 to 4. And then we have this really, really cool way of making our way back to 1. Now, we also have some elements of the blues in here. So Charlie Parker, just pure genius here. He really has a way of hinting at all these different things while also being completely original. So now what can we do with this chord progression? That's what we want to investigate next. So really what I want to get at in this is voice leading. Okay, voice leading is the most important thing, especially for a progression like this that's so complicated. Matters less what you play and more how you voice lead. So let's pick a good note over every single chord here. So we're going to start on the 3rd, then we're going to go down to the 3rd of this chord, then we're going to go down to the 3rd of this chord, the 3rd of this chord, the 3rd of this chord. Are you seeing a theme here? 3rd of this chord, 3rd of this chord, 3rd of this chord. So it's all thirds. And we're going to practice voice leading from one measure to the next with an 8th note line that is going to play the 3rd of each chord at the beginning of each measure. Before we do that, let's see how this actually sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now what we want to do is we want to actually fill in the measures with, and I'm going to use 8th notes just to keep things simple because I'm thinking about notes right now, not rhythms. Okay, so I'm going to come up with running 8th note line that uses the 3rd on the downbeat of each measure. And that's really going to help me to start hearing that beautiful voice leading that we just heard on the 3rd of every chord. Now let's check out another possibility. This is the exact same idea, the 3rd on the downbeat of every single measure, just a different composition, if you will, exercise over the top of it. I'm investigating other options. Okay, so now let's take a look at another possibility that's actually a little bit more complicated, right? So now, as you can see, we're starting on the 5th, and we're going to do our voice leading off of that. But now you'll notice that in these measures, there's 2 notes per measure because we're going to make the voice leading a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit cooler sounding. So we start on the 5th, we go down to the flat 5, and then that becomes the flat 9. Then we go 5th, flat 9, 5th, flat 9, 5th. And then we do 5th, flat 9, 5th, 5th, flat 9, and then we resolve down to the 5th. So here we go. 2, 3, 4. Isn't that nice? Obviously a little bit more dissonant, but that's what we want in our playing a lot of the time is some dissonance. All right, now what can we do with this? So exact same idea as the last time. We're going to write out these 8th note lines, but this time we're going to observe all those different voice leading notes that we came up with in the last exercise. Okay, and then to finish things up, let's actually do some rhythm. So now we're using the same voice leading points, but now we're just going to switch up the rhythm and not use running 8th notes anymore. And this could be sort of the next step after you write a bunch of 8th note lines, start considering rhythm, and that will really get you to the next level. so hopefully you got something out of that. And hopefully this is a tune now where if you've always been hesitant to approach it and get started with it, at least you have some knowledge floating around up there that can help you. I can't do the long hours in the practice room for you, but at least I could try to make it a little bit easier to get going and a little bit less intimidating. So let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. I do try to read all of those and get back to you, or as many as I can. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. That is the #1 thing you can do to help this channel. And while you're at it, you might as well subscribe and turn on notifications so that you never miss a video. Most of all, thanks for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I hope it's provided value to you, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.